Okay, I just wanted to rant about, okay, hold on. I know it's a very good hook, I want to rant. Rings of Power has gotten a lot of hate, and it's been well pointed out by a lot of very, very caring and loving Tolkien fans that just giving Rings of Power hate does not in itself help anybody. So I'm going to try. I have a lot of deep feelings about it, and that said, I only muscled through season 1 and episode 1 of season 2 because it was hard to watch. But I'm going to try and keep things just rational and positive if I can. Talking about Rings of Power, some of the things that really bothered me, some of the things that I feel like would have made it better, and or situational changes that would have made the story we got. I feel like I would have received it better in some of these that I'll get into. Alright, that said, again, I want to rant, but I'm going to try and just keep it just conversational because I rant too much. Anyway, so Rings of Power is Amazon's attempt at adapting the Lord of the Rings. Now, it's been said by people that Amazon only had rights to the appendices, or Amazon only had rights to some of the appendices and to some of the Lord of the Rings chapters, and I've also heard it said that they had rights to all of The Hobbit, all of the Lord of the Rings, and all of the appendices in the back of The Return of the King. Whichever one of those is accurate, I don't know. But what they made, I don't know where their source material was, because it's about as accurate as if I made a movie portraying Napoleon Bonaparte going to town and buying a loaf of bread from Julius Caesar, who just barely talked to his uncle Alexander the Great, who was off in Australia visiting George W. Bush at his villa next to the Mediterranean Sea. None of those things match up in time or in geography or in logic or anything. But here we are, the rings haven't been made yet. Isildur is already chilling and somehow being indoctrinated into this weird cult of not Ulmo, because Ulmo is too cool for Rings of Power, obviously, but the sea is always right somehow. Okay, whatever. The One Ring was made after the 9, the 7, and the 3, and the One Ring was made like 1,000 years before the downfall of Numenor. So we got some wacky timelines going on, and Galadriel is old and wise in lore, and an old wise person. Obviously she doesn't look old, she's an elf, she's ageless, but she's been around for a long time, and somebody who's been around for that long would be very silly to spend an entire, I don't know, month or more hanging out with this person. She's gone around the world with this dude, and now she's helping him help Celebrimbor and the other elves of Eregion make these magic rings to stop the fading, which, I mean, that's their portrayal of it. If they want to portray the elves fading as this black goop that's coming along, I mean, that's artistic license, so whatever. I won't get into that. But she's been talking with him this whole time, and then she suddenly finds out he's Sauron. What? And then instead of going and saying, hold up, Sauron's bad, I don't like Sauron, he's nefarious, and he's actively trying to influence me to join his bad side, like Darth Vader right there, but I'm still gonna go along with what he was telling me to do. That's not, I don't even think Anakin would have been quite that silly. And I mean, he was maybe a little bit on that silly spectrum, but he had a lot more emotional investment going on. He was dealing with depression, he was dealing with anxiety, he was dealing with PTSD, and he was dealing with, like, his whole world was crumbling to bits because the people he trusted and revered the most were, on the one hand, either turning out to be the utter villain of everything, or on the other hand, turning out to not care one bit about him. And so, like, of course, Anakin would do crazy things in that emotionally vulnerable state because he's divided in so many ways and so compromised, he can't think straight. And just saying that out loud, for the first time, I feel like I totally understand where Anakin was coming from. Not saying he was right. I just understand how somebody can be so divided that, like, of course, the most illogical choice in the world suddenly makes so much sense for him to do right there. Anyway, back out of the weeds, sorry. Back to Rings of Power. Galadriel should not, in the context of the show, have been willing to go through and say, yeah, Celebrimbor, yeah, Elrond, let's go through and make these rings. We have to do it because reasons. She should have at that point come in and said, hey, that was Sauron, we got to find something else. Because in the story of the Rings of Power, Celebrimbor was super eager to learn from Anatar, and he was super eager to, like, keep Middle-earth the way that it was. Now, I can understand that desire because even as just a young millennial, I feel like the world is just rapidly fading in front of my face. And, like, being an elf, having lived for centuries and millennia, and watching as things just fade and disappear. You've known this forest for 5 centuries or more, and now it's suddenly just wilting and not coming back. Like, that would be tragic, you know? So of course they'd all want to stop the fading, and they're world weary because they've been around for so long. They've seen so many highs and lows and everywhere in between. Like, yeah, they want to fix things. They want to stop it from aging. So I get it. And here comes this person who says, hey, I love Middle-earth as much as you do, and I want to see it flourish too. So yeah, of course Celebrimbor would be duped by that. I really did not appreciate turning Gil-galad into just some weird politician who ignores everyone around him except for himself. Like, that did Gil-galad so dirty. And again, I'm trying not to rant. That's not even artistic license, man. That's a totally different person. Galadriel is different. Gil-galad is different. Elrond was the closest thing to Elrond, to being his actual book self. And he gets treated like he's nothing. Quick aside. Something that, in the way the show happened, would have earned at least a lot of grace from me, would have been when Elrond goes to Celebrimbor's shop and he sees the Hammer of Feanor there. If he just paused, and obviously they didn't have rights to the Silmarillion, but the actor could have read the book, could have just emoted a sense of nostalgia is the closest word in English I can think of, and I don't know other languages, so if someone else knows a better word, help me out here. But Elrond and his brother Elros were kidnapped by the Sons of Feanor, and they watched their mother dive into the sea to save the Silmaril from the Sons of Feanor. And then eventually, Maglor came to be friends with them. They grew in respect and love for each other, and there would just be so many feelings there. The Silmarils that hammer is said to have helped forge, they are kind of what caused his whole family to be ripped to pieces. Now, yes, he's going to eventually probably have a chance to see his father again. Possibly, I guess, maybe not, maybe. But he'll never see his brother again. And he got kidnapped and watched his mother have to flee for her life because of the Silmarils. So, like, it would be full of hope and love and regret and sorrow and loss and all of that tied in, and a good actor, and I feel like the actor who played Elrond has the capacity to do this. I wish that they would have directed him to make some expression like that, to say, hey, like, you you can't say these things necessarily, but show it in your face. You know, show that loss, that love, that regret, that fondness, that all of those feelings would just be rushing back to him when he sees the Hammer of Feanor, and he's like, and if he'd have just taken a moment to just something, I feel like that would have gone so well. Oh, it would have made that scene way better. Anyway, so Payne and McKay, if you are listening, it's probably not the case, but if you are, take that in mind, you know. Or Bezos, if you happen to find this, take that in mind. Back to it though. I don't know what sources they were looking for or looking at, because the rings. I forgot. Sorry, I distracted myself. Got in the weeds. So Celebrimbor, obviously he wanted to help make these rings because he wanted to stop the fading of time and everything. And at the time he was duped by Annatar, Gil-galad and Galadriel didn't trust Annatar. They were like, nah, we're not about this guy. I know we want what he's selling, but we don't like him. There's something bad about him. Can't put our finger on it, but there is. And he's like, no, it's fine. They made the 7, they made the 9, and it's theorized in some circles, like Durin claimed that he got his ring from Celebrimbor himself. A lot of the dwarves believed that they never got their rings from Sauron, they got them from straight from the elves. But because Sauron was involved with them, they were all linked to the one. But the biggest thing for me is that Sauron had zero to do with the forging of the 3. Like, obviously, they were forged using the methods that he had taught them, and so in that sense, he was involved, I guess. But like, only because they used the methods he taught them were they linked to the power of the one when the one was forged. But he never had anything else to do with the forging of the 3 rings. He was involved with the forging of the 7. He was involved basically directly with the forging of the 9, if I understand correctly. And then Celebrimbor forged the last 3. He put on his, and then he perceived the mind of Sauron and immediately was like, nope, this is a no-go because this is a trap. It was Celebrimbor who was like, this is a no-go, And then, I think in Season 2 of Rings of Power, they did portray Sauron going back and trying to take the rings from Celebrimbor and killing Celebrimbor, which I've seen clips. It looks beautifully shot. I don't know if I could muscle through the anachronisms getting to that point, like the whole Mithril origin story from Season 1. Anyway, sorry, again, getting into the weeds. There are benefits, there are definitely beautiful things that the show did. The show gave us some beautiful shots of Middle-earth and a few beautiful action set pieces, and it's just so sad. And it gave us some lovely music. It's just so sad that it was wrapped in what is the show. But that aside, I think I'm done ranting about the rings. I talked to my brother a while ago about some changes to the show that would just be some minor changes that would have made it go so much better. For one, obviously straightening up the timeline a little bit. I love that we're introducing Isildur when he's younger, showing that as he's about to grow up. So at this point he's not married, he doesn't have his kids, and obviously Gondor and Arnor are not established yet because Numenor is still around. But if you're going to start with young Isildur, you have to have Sauron already in play. The One Ring is forged, all the other rings are forged. The elves have the 3 rings, but they can't use them because Sauron has the one. He's already, you could maybe say like he's still trying to find all 9 of the men, because something I would love to see on screen would be the origin story of the Witch King, who in my head, this is entirely in my head canon, the Witch King, in my mind, should be shown to have been like a very noble prince of Numenor. almost like Isildur, but what Isildur could have become if he had kept the One Ring and not been killed by orcs in the Gladden Fields, and decided ultimately not to talk to Elrond. He was on his way to talk to Elrond, figure it out, when he got waylaid by the orcs in the Gladden Fields and killed. But the Witch King's origin story in my head is something like a very noble prince who had noble desires and wanted to use the ring to benefit Middle-earth, and everything he did turned to corruption, so he would do something else to try and fix it, ultimately bringing him deeper and deeper into the darkness of Sauron, until ultimately he succumbed to it. And then I have a little extra thing that I like to think about adding to that, is that he was somehow tied, or the barrow blade that Merry ends up stabbing him with in the end. I would love if there was something tying that blade to the Witch King in his youth, or to his family line. Maybe he had a son or a grandson who made it to Arnor and helped forge that sword. So it's like linked to his family line. Again, getting in the weeds. But something like that, to have shown or to give the tension, given Isildur's early days. Maybe the Witch King could have even been a friend of Isildur. That would have been pretty cool. You know, maybe Isildur would have been approached by Sauron in disguise before Ar-Pharazôn assaulted Mordor, and Isildur was offered a ring and turned it down. I mean, that could have been a really intriguing show, because then you could have had tension between Isildur and his friend, who now has this ring of power, and Isildur's like, oh my gosh, dude, you are like slipping into corruption, and I don't know what's going on. Anyway, that would have been really cool. It would have been a change that would have given tension, it would have given depth and character and dimension to the story, but they didn't do that. Anyway, another thing, Disa could have been such a cool character to explore. So, in the story of the Lord of the Rings, we know there are 7 houses of dwarves. Now, to my knowledge, the House of Durin is really the only one that ever gets explored. We know there are other houses of dwarves, because when Thorin and Balin and Dine and anyone else, I don't remember who all was involved in the attack on Moria back way before the mission to Erebor, when they were going to avenge Thorin's father. No, I'm mixing things up. Forgive me in my inaccuracies. I think his father was involved in this. So, anyway, they went and they attacked Moria, and they actually defeated Azog. They defeated the orcs in Moria, but they used, like, they had contacted other dwarves, and those other dwarves were not of the line of Durin. And that's why they couldn't hold Moria, because those other dwarves were like, hey, look, this is the Hall of our fathers. I'm so happy for you guys to get your halls back, but we're out. Like, this, we came to help you stop the orcs. That's as far as we go, because this is just not our place. It's not our space. We don't want it. And so then the people of Durin's folk that were left were not enough to hold Moria, which is why it was then lost again, and why Balin had to go back later and tried to retake it, and the rest is history. So Disa, sorry, I'm driving and I'm not scripted here, so I'm just having to try and keep my mind on track. Disa in the show, she's not really explained. A lot of people complain, oh, she's black, why? That's so dumb. I mean, guys, we're living in 2026, which, I mean, maybe that's just sign of the times, but, like, it doesn't matter if someone's black or white or whatever. Everybody who's read Lord of the Rings, or no, not everyone, sadly, many people who've read Lord of the Rings very much love it. And it should be for everyone, regardless of your skin color. People come from all parts of the world and settle in all parts of the world. There are British people of African origin and of American origin and of Asian origin and yada yada yada, it is okay for somebody to represent somebody in Lord of the Rings who is not white. It's fine for a not white person to portray someone in Lord of the Rings. That should not be a problem, and anyone who has a problem with that is silly. Disa is a very interesting character, and they could have acknowledged her difference in skin color by saying during the Sixth, he went off and he pissed his father off a lot because he wandered the world, searching high and low, exploring the other households of dwarves. And maybe in a southern region of the world, he came across this other group of dwarves from another line, and that's where he met Disa. They fell in love, and he says, hey, come back with me to Khazad-dûm. It's beautiful. You will absolutely love it. And by the way, we've got like this precious mineral there, mithril, and I just know you will love it. And she maybe has this cultural tendency to sing to the stones, to hear what's there. And she's like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. I cannot wait to go to your halls in Khazad-dûm. And that's why she sings to the stones, and that's why it's not really otherwise explained. But that immediately now explains why her skin looks suddenly different from all the other dwarves around, because she's from a different region of the world. She's from a different household of dwarves. And at the same time, anyone who's complained, well, there's not enough representation of diverse, different, like black people and Asian people and yada yada yada. Now, you've introduced this whole other line of dwarves from this other part of the world. They literally are. So now any sequels and other spin-offs, you could say, okay, we're going to follow this other line of dwarves. Cool. Awesome. Arendir, I believe, mentioned something about Beleriand, just in passing. It's not really touched on otherwise. Something that I think would have been awesome, just to give his character a little bit more of a tether to the actual source material without, and maybe I'm wrong, I think this would be allowed without like crossing copyright issues, but I believe Gondolin is mentioned in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, so you could mention Gondolin. Okay, hear me out. He could say, he does, like when he's talking with his other guard guy, which that whole setup, didn't really love it. It was silly and contrived, but it is what it is. This would have still made that scene a trillion times better. He's talking with the guy, talked about his origin, says he's from Beleriand, and then he says he was actually born in Gondolin, but he was just a baby when Gondolin fell. Okay, wow, that's fascinating. So he doesn't really remember it, but he says my mother was a maiden to the princess, and my father, well, I don't really talk about my father. He was her cousin, and I don't talk about him. Now, you've not named names, so people can't be like, oh, well, that's copyrighted. You can't use Meglin. What? Oh, now we're all like, your dad was Meglin? Holy crap! Oh my goodness, you, sir, are way better of a person than your father ever was, and you are now tied to such a beautiful and tragic story. I absolutely love you, Arendir, and I absolutely do not care that you are completely made up for this show, because I am here for it. Oh my goodness, that would have been so cool. You didn't have to change anything else about him. Just give him a couple of little lines of dialogue. Say, yeah, I was born in Gondolin just before it fell. My mother was maiden to the princess, because I don't think you could use her name. And, well, I don't talk about my father. What? And the person could ask him, who was your father? I don't talk about him. And all you have to say is, I don't talk about my father. And people would probably infer that. You don't even have to say that he was the cousin of the princess. But if you did, everyone who knows. They're like, oh my goodness, your dad is Meglin? That's awesome and sad for you, but awesome still. Also, that then ties him in with Elrond's father's origin story. So maybe if he crosses paths with Elrond, they have a little something to chat about, because Elrond could be like, dude, I know you. You were like, my father talked about you as as you guys were growing up. And he'd be like, your dad was Arundel? Oh my gosh. Yeah, he was like 8 years older than me. I knew him. I don't know. Maybe that's getting silly. But I think that would have been so cool. And just closing this out, for any of you who were introduced to the Lord of the Rings through Rings of Power, I hope you have been able to enjoy it. I wish that I could go through and watch it without my sense of, criticism and everything, so that I could maybe see what people find enjoyable about it. Like I said, I love the music. I love the set pieces. It looks beautiful. I'm not such a fan of the costumes and the hairstyles, and that's me. That's artistic choice, and people have preferences and anti-preferences there, but it is what it is. It's neither here nor there. I'm glad you guys can enjoy it who do, and I'm sorry if this did turn into somewhat of a rant, but if you've got this far, thank you. Making videos is not my strong suit, but I am working on it, and I'm hoping to get better at it. So feedback is welcome, as long as it's constructive feedback. And any comments, any discussions in the comment section, please keep them respectful and productive. And I'll catch you next time.